Hello everyone, welcome to the show. I am your host, Misty Doan. I'm so happy to be here with you today, and we have Liz.
Hello.
Behind the camera making her shout outs as always. We appreciate you being here, Liz.
I appreciate getting to be here.
Couldn't do it without you.
It's so much fun.
It is so much fun. I'm really excited about the project I have to share with you today. I kind of stumbled down a rabbit hole and found this awesome video talking about Seminole piecing and the indigenous Seminole tribe and this style of sewing that they use to craft incredible garments for their traditional wear. And I was so absolutely inspired, and I want to encourage you to check that out because I'm going to show you just a tiny tidbit, but make sure you go ahead and Google all of the different things that can be done with this method that was created by the indigenous Seminole tribe. It is truly amazing. There's so much that can be done. And we're just barely going to scratch the surface, and I am no expert, but I enjoyed learning this process, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
It's really inspiring.
It really is.
It's
incredible what using different widths and pieces together you can create using this same method I'm going to teach you in a very simple form today. So we are going to make this diamond ring runner.
It's beautiful.
And we've got these beautiful rainbow prints using this shadow play 2.5-inch strip roll from Maywood Studios. It's beautiful, tonal colors, very vibrant and bright. And I just went ahead and pulled 8 that I wanted to use out of that roll. So you're going to select 8 2.5-inch strips. And then we're going to make some strip sets today. And so you can see here, I've got my 8 colors that I chose, and I've sandwiched it in between 4-inch background strips. So you can see here, I've just got my 2.5-inch strip in the middle and my 4-inch background strip on either side. To make one runner, you're going to need 1 yard of background fabric, but to do this, you really only need half of each of your jelly roll strips. So you can see here, this isn't the full width of fabric. I've cut it in half. If you want, you could make 2 runners at once while you're going and just grab 2 yards of this background fabric.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind. And so to get started, we're just going to, now that we've got all of these sewn together and pressed, I went ahead and pressed them out because I found that to be helpful, and I pressed all of my strips the same way, and you're going to see why in just a little bit. So I've got this pressed, I don't have any rumples, and we're going to cut now 2.5-inch strips off of our strip set that we made. So let me just make sure this is all lined up, and I'm going to straighten up this edge here.
So love the strip piecing part of this because this lets you not have to worry about each individual small piece and lining it all up. Okay.
Exactly. And I know people are looking at these strip sets and this final runner and going, how in the world are we going to get there? I promise it's pretty magical. You are going to love this. So then now 2.5 inches for each of our strips. And you're just going to continue this down your strip set, obviously, but I'm going to go ahead and cut some from each of our different colors because that's what we're going to use. So I'm going to do one from here, 2.5. This edge is nice and straight, so I can use that. And then let's grab this yellow.
And I see you're not using the mat, you're using the ruler today, right?
I am.
Okay.
I kind of switch back and forth depending on, application, which one is more helpful to me.
But for anyone who's panicking that didn't look straight, it's okay. The ruler's straight.
The ruler is straight, I promise. Yeah, sorry. Maybe I should make it look neater just so it's
No, you're good.
Easier on the eye. And then we're going to go 2.5 from that edge of fabric. There we go. All right. And so like I said, you're going to continue that with all of your 8 strip sets. And what we're going to create is a set of 4 of these together. And so if you look in here, you can see my pattern is repeating all the way through this project. And so I've got this kind of teal, blue, purple, pink, and then red, orange, yellow, green. And so I've cut the red, orange, yellow, green here, And let me show you how we're going to put these together. I'm going to start in sets of 2, and we're going to stagger these. So what we're actually looking for is the bottom of this orange triangle. We're going to place these right sides together, and because we've pressed all of our seams out, you can see this is going to nest up just like a 4 patch there.
Oh, how snazzy is that?
You see those seams are just going to lock together, and so the top and the bottom are not going to match up, but this is going to intersect right here to make those diamond points meet beautifully. So now you can put a pin in that if you need, but I find it's really easy to just keep together because those do nest so well. So let's go ahead and take this to the machine. And now we're just going to sew our normal 1/4 inch seam down the side. There we go. Look how nice that looks. It looks great.
That's perfect.
It's perfect. So let's press that, and then I'll show you one more time. Here we go. See how great that matches up? And so now we can take our yellow and we can do the exact same thing. And so we can just, again, we're going to match up those, and our seams are going to nest. You can see how they're locking together like that. That's what we mean when they nest. See how our backgrounds are in opposite places there? And because they're pressed opposite directions, they just kind of hold in there. And so we can take that to the machine.
This is such a snazzy trick.
It is honestly, once you get going, it was so much easier than I expected, and it was really fun to see all of the different possibilities. I mean, I was just so inspired by the incredible patterns that are created with this method. Okay. There's that. And then because we aren't intersecting anything, you can actually just sit and add and add and add at your machine once you figure out the steps. So let's go ahead and add this last green one. Remember, we're staggering them. We're looking for that seam to nest up, just like so. Make sure the edge of our fabric is all aligned, and then we can put it under our presser foot and sew that 1/4 inch seam. There we go. Now I have 4 together. Now, like I said, I made the sets of 4 colors. And so I ended up, for each runner, I believe you need 6 of each set of 4.
Okay.
So I kept it as 4 initially because it makes the next step much simpler. And so we're going to go ahead now and we're going to trim our sides straight so that we aren't dealing with these little jaggedy edges any longer. And so I'm just going to lay it like this, and I found it helpful to use the straight line of my mat and place the points of...
Oh, good tip. Okay.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
I know it's as straight as possible before I bring my ruler in. And so you can see I've got this straight line of my cutting mat, and I've got the point here and the point here, both on that spot. So I know it's as straight as possible. And so now what we want to do, from that point, we want to measure over 1 3/4 inches on one side. So we're just going to go over here, 1 3/4 inches. And the reason we're doing that is because that gives us, make sure I've got it straight, plenty of seam allowance so that we're not going to cut off those points when we start stitching things together and adding our binding. And so I'm just going to make sure this one, I still have plenty on that edge, and now we can trim this off straight. So just like that. And now I like to turn it around, and now that I have that straight edge, I can just lay that straight against my mat again, and I'm going to measure over 3 1/2.
So that's 1 3/4 times 2. 3
Exactly.
1/2. Okay.
So same idea. And if we've measured over from the middle, it should work out just right now because we've got that straight edge. And so just make sure everything is nice and straight. Check the points. Make sure you don't look like you're getting too close on any of those. This one's shifting just a little, so I'm going to make sure I have plenty of room there. And now we're going to cut that side straight. Once we've done that, we want to...
I want to pause you just a second. So
Sure.
When you were sewing them together, you said you can just keep adding, but you've stopped at 4. And
Right.
you want to do 4 because if you keep going, the trimming's a little trickier.
It makes
right?
it trickier. It's
Okay.
not impossible. It's just, you know, obviously for this bottom edge, you end up with quite a long strip. And it's much more difficult to get it accurate if you have that whole strip sewn together
Okay.
instead of taking the time to trim it at this point. So you can see, even once you've trimmed it, you can still go back in and add, well, let me see. You can add them together. And so even once I've trimmed this one, because I have this little peak that's left off, let me sew this one together so I can show you.
Okay.
Because I think it'll be easier to explain. So let's just sew one more.
Quick pause. Can you move the...
Yep. So we're lining this up again, and we're just going to sew this set. There we go. Go ahead and give this one a press. This way I can show trimming one more time.
That's awesome.
Okay, so again, we put our points on the straight line of our mat just for reference. And our first cut, we're going to measure over 1 3/4 inches. Checking to make sure we've got plenty on each of our points. And we're just going to trim that off. There we go.
And you can see your ruler fits on that whole 4
Exactly.
piece
it makes
rather
it
than
very,
yeah.
very easy.
Okay,
You
makes
don't
a lot of sense.
Don't have to fight with it too much. And so again, I just like to make sure I've got that cut straight on my mat so I don't have any risk of error. And then we're going to measure over 3.5, which should give us the same result on the other side of our diamonds.
Yep.
And so we'll trim that. And I'm not trimming off my edges at this point, my little triangles, because I want the option to either keep adding for these long strips, because this is 4 sets alternating between, you know, the teal colorway and the red colorway. So you alternate in between the two across the bottom, and then you just have 1 set on each side. But when you put them together, you can see here that they're going to line up just the same, even when you've cut them. And so you'll just put this right sides together and nest those seams, stitch it down, and flip it back. Okay, now that we've covered how we're going to make the strips, let's talk about how we're going to finish them off, whether we have these short strips or 4 of them sewn together. So how we're going to do that is we're going to take our 4-inch strips that we cut for the sides, and we're going to go ahead and cut a few 4-inch squares. And then we're going to cut those squares in half, corner to corner, just like so. And this is what we're going to add to the end of our strip sets. So whether it's the long set or the short ones on the side, you're going to need 1 square for each of those to finish them off so that we can make it end up square and be able to trim it off. So you can see this hangs over just a little bit on either side, and for me it's easier to have it a little big than a little small. So I think it makes it much easier to do this process. And so we're just going to make sure it overhangs at least 1/4 inch on the bottom and the top, and then we're going to sew our 1/4 inch seam right down the side on both ends.
Okay.
So let's do that. There's the first one.
And again, you're overhanging it a little bit on both sides.
Yes, just
Okay.
a little bit. Honestly, this bottom side, this narrow side, is more important than this top side because a lot of this side is going to be cut off. So you just need to make sure that you have an adequate overhang on the bottom, at least 1/4 inch, so that when you turn this out and press it, you're going to have plenty of seam allowance and you're not going to lose that point. That's what we're looking for.
Okay.
So we're just going to sew this down. There we go. And now we can roll it back. See here, I want this to be a nice straight edge when I press this back, so it will all finish the same width. So that looks exactly like what we need. So now I can take it to the ironing board and we'll just give this a nice press. Just like so.
Okay, so Misty, I'm going to recap for folks who are just joining in.
Perfect.
So what we've made is using inspired by the Seminole Indigenous peoples piecing
Yes.
method. We've chosen to use 8 strips of 2.5 inch fabric, and you've got a rainbow here, of course.
Of course.
And so you need about 1/2 of each of those strips to make this runner.
That's right.
And then we used about 1 yard of background material cut into 4-inch strips. And most of those 4-inch strips were put on either side of the 2.5 inch strip. But you've saved a little bit to make these 4-inch squares
On the ends, yep.
so that we could cut them into triangles and add them to the ends. So that's where we are so far.
Yes.
And now we're going to put this whole thing together.
That's exactly right. Exactly. And so now that we have our 4 together, I recommend starting with these. You're going to need 1 of each colorway for the ends of your runner. So if you look here, you can see the 4 in the middle. We have 1 set that's the teal to pink and 1 set that's the red to green. And so we are going to have 1 of each of those on the sides. And so let's go ahead and trim this up and get it ready to attach to our center fabric. And I designed this with a different fabric to make it really clear to you guys where our border was and where the accent fabric was. I wanted it to really pop with this technique, but you could totally use the same fabric here if you wanted. So now we're going to begin by trimming so that we have our 1/4 inch overhang from our points. Remember, that's what we're always looking for so we don't lose those points when we sew these together. And so let's just make sure this is nice and straight here. And we're going to trim off 1 end so that we've got 1/4 inch on that side. Then we can turn this and use our mat because we need this strip to measure 12 inches. And you'll notice when we get to 12 inches, again, it's going to work out to leave that 1/4 inch overhang that we need on this side. It works out just right. And you can see what I mean about cutting the majority of that top side off.
Gotcha. That's why it didn't matter as much.
Exactly. That bottom side is really the crucial part for this. And so those are our waist, and now we have our side pieces ready to go. And so we can attach our 2 sides. Remember I told you we need 1 of each colorway, so I have the other colorway ready to go here. And we have a 12 by 40 inch piece of black accent fabric that makes up the center of our runner. And so we're going to just pay attention to the runner here to make sure I match the same placement that we've got. And it looks like on this side, I need to sew my pink to teal. And so I'm going to do that first. And it lines up beautifully. So let's just go ahead and sew that down.
And to get that 12 by 40, we cut a 12-inch width of fabric.
Yep.
And then cutting off the selvage edge, we're able to get to that 40.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so this is a great place as you're sewing down. Remember, it's those junctions, those seams where our points show. We want to make sure our seam line that we're stitching is on this side of those junctures so that we don't lose our points. So you can just watch that as you're sewing down.
Great tip, because as long as you stay on that side, your points are totally
Exactly.
available. Okay.
So just take your time as you're going. Keep everything lined up. there's that side. And now we can go ahead while we're here at the machine, attach the other side. And so I know when I flip it, now I'm looking at it this way. Sometimes I have to actually do this to keep my brain right.
Honestly, good tip.
It's a great tip. So, oh wait, yep. So here's my pink, and so that means on the bottom of this side, I need my red. So now I can put it this way. Honestly, this would be totally adorable, completely scrappy. So
Oh, yeah.
If trying to make this rainbow circle go around is too much for you, don't stress about it. If it's completely scrappy, it's going to be adorable.
It is.
I just like couldn't resist the rainbow chaining all the way around the edge.
I
so.
find that surprising, Misty.
I know, you're shocked, right? Okay, and so we've got that one on correctly, and we can sew again, making sure we're staying on the seam side of our points so we don't lose those.
And guys, we can't wait to see what you do with this. So use the hashtag MSQC show and tell to show us your versions, whether you choose a different color pattern or a completely scrappy version. It's going to look gorgeous.
There we go. And so we've got those sewn on. We can give those a press. Just like that. I know, they look so great. You do want to be careful because you do have some bias here. So just don't pull when you're pressing. Just let the iron do the work. And then you can see how this is going to set in just like it is on our runner. And here is our long strip. And we'll just make one for each side and sew that on. And you can see how beautifully that will all finish up in our finished project. Isn't that so fun?
And I just want to point out too, the long strip, you've got one that is red, orange, yellow, green
Yes.
with the one teal.
That's
and two
true.
red, orange, yellow, greens.
So you're actually having opposites. You can see here it's red, teal, and here it's teal, red, red. So for either end, you're just going to start with the opposite color set to get it
Okay.
to chain all the way around. And then, you know, it's the same here. Here's our teal and here's our red. And that's why we're just alternating between those all the way around, and you get this awesome diamond ring runner. So it turns
Love
out
it.
so great. The project finishes at 17 by 46. It's a great size, and it looks beautiful and cheery on your table. So do you have any other questions, Liz?
I think that we're covering, I just want to recap one more time because
Sure.
there was a lot of good stuff here. So I know I've said 5, but it's actually 6. So there's 6 of the 4-pack pieces.
Yep, the 4 color sets.
4 color sets.
Yes.
In the 2 long sides. And then
Yes.
you've got 1 on either end. And we did this by taking our 2.5-inch strips, adding a 4-inch strip to either side, staggering those after we cut them into more 2.5-inch strips. So guys, all of this is in the description below.
Yep.
If we follow along, it was really easy and it's really fun.
It's very fun. And like I said, I just want to encourage you one more time to do some research into Seminole piecing, because you will be amazed at the incredible patterns that have been created by the Seminole tribe. It is so incredibly inspiring. So inspiring. I
Stunning
can't
and
wait to play
beautiful.
more. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it opened your eyes to a new way of piecing. It's a great way to get a project on point without having to cut all of those little triangles to set them. It makes it really fun and easy. So have a wonderful day. We will see you next week. See you later.